Okay, welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Zone, where we look at the paranormal, the ufologist, metaphysical, and everything that goes bump into the night from many different angles, interviewing many different people. Today we have Debbie Perkins on. Debbie is from Maine. She once had her own podcast show, and she's coming back with it hopefully soon. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about the most haunted house in Maine and a few other things. Well, also, too, before I forget, Melody is back. Bob will be back in maybe a month or so. He's still on this huge case, but he will be back. So, Melody, welcome again. You've been a great co-host for the last 6 shows, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having me back, as always.
Yes, it's fun to have you on. Get to laugh, joke, add a good sense to, well, my not-so-great sense of humor. And I could hear everybody in the background laughing because they just do.
I'm being quiet, but I'm laughing in my head right now.
I know you are.
I have to do like that.
Yeah, because you've known me quite a few years, Debbie. So I want to introduce our guest, Debbie Perkins, who had her own show for years. She's a paranormal investigator and many other things. She's a jack of all trades and a master of them all.
Yeah, right. I wish. But
welcome,
I'd like
Debbie.
to introduce myself too. I'm Debbie Perkins, and I've done paranormal investigating since the year 2000, 1999, pretty much. Mostly because I had experienced one right after the other all my life. And I didn't dare, when I was young, I didn't tell anybody. I was just scared because I don't want to be put in a white jacket, locked up in a room as a child because they would consider me cuckoo. So a lot of my experiences I had to hold on to in my mind. I knew they happened, but I couldn't speak of them because people and their judgmentals. So I ended up confirming some of the things when I was, that I had experienced. Mostly as a teenager, I was babysitting, and the house that I was babysitting in was built in the 1800s, and a magazine like at 12 o'clock at night. I was allowed to have my boyfriend over, so the kids were in bed for hours, and because I was a good person, so I didn't do nothing bad. But my boyfriend left because he had to go to work, and I, as a teenager, I was lucky to have a guy that had that kind of life. He's working and whatever. But as soon as he left, it was like I put on Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, the song, you guys know, and a magazine went flying over my head from a stand. It was just a regular book stand that sits on the floor.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the floor because I was going through the records. I'm waiting for these people to get home. I know they're not going to get home for at least another hour because they like to drink, and so they had, like to drink and dance, and that's what they were doing. Well, that magazine went flying over my head. Now, I'm probably 16, and it scared me to the point where I had no idea what happened. I saw it. I didn't even know how to acknowledge it, but I just ran in the kitchen. I turned on all the lights. I didn't even bother caring about the kids. I was just a teenager scared out of my wits. So the kitchen was the very next room over. So I went in there, and the very bright lights, and kept them on and sat there. Well, when they got home, they were tipsy-turvy, but they said, why all the lights on? And I explained to them what happened, and they totally understood. They knew exactly what I just dealt with, and they laughed. And I'm like, this isn't very funny. I'm scared. I'm like scared. So come to find out, it was the grandmother keeping me in line. She's buried in the front yard. They have a graveyard in their front yard. Well, some years later, I ended up living on that road. And so they become my neighbors, the people. And I talked to them because the guy was always going out hunting. And one day I'm over there looking at the graveyard and just kind of gathering information, what happened to me? What was that all about? And looking in the graveyard, and I found the lady, but the graveyard was bigger. It was small when I was a teenager, and then all of a sudden it looked bigger. So the man comes up out of the woods, he's hunting, and I said, do you remember me? And of course he did, because I'm like living right next door, and I babysat for him. Well, I said, so can you just answer me one question? When I was a teenager and you guys came home, the lights were on, did that really, really happen? Like, I'm not a man. Oh yeah. She still haunts the house. So whether, I think that was an intelligent haunting because she knew what she was doing.
Right.
That wasn't like, just randomly walking on the old planks type of thing in a building. This was an intelligent haunting. Mm-hmm. So that led me to want to know more. And then I lived in this old house with an ex-boyfriend, and I saw a woman walk from the hallway into the wall, and I said nothing at first. And then after a few days, I'm like, I think I'm seeing things, So I mentioned it to his mother, and she said, yes, that's from the people who used to live here like years ago. There was a door there. Well, there's no door there. The door's actually in a different spot. But these old houses, they remodel everything every 50 years or whatever. My house is the same way. It was built in 1805, and every 50 years they remodeled something in the house,
Right.
But it builds its character. Anyway, so at that point, I was like, that's it. I lived near a graveyard, so a small one. So I kept going there, and there was a lot of children. I think there must have been some type of illness epidemic, or you know how it was back then. They just like my house, a little girl died from what is it called when
throat distemper.
Their lungs all fill up with fluid, and they just
throat distemper.
Yeah. So So long story short, it led me to want to know, is this stuff real? Am I seeing? I don't want to be institutionalized because I'm seeing things or I'm experiencing things, and things are touching me. And a lot of times I feel a cat that died on my bed. Constantly feel it walking on the bed. I do believe animals and humans, when they pass over, they still leave their signature.
That they do. Hey, I got a question for you, Debbie.
I don't know if we're allowed to separate and go to the other side and go all the way, through the tunnel and all that stuff. I'm not there, so I can't explain that one.
Right.
But from what I'm experiencing, it does feel like there's some intelligence going on. There's spirits that they want the connection, too. There's a lot of them that just want that connection.
That they
do. Even if it's brief.
Absolutely.
You agree with me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So Debbie, I got a question for you.
Probably got me into it, and I went in the graveyard with the analog and one of those cameras that takes the picture, it comes out the bottom.
Yes.
And I captured a soldier. He looked like a soldier, but he didn't look like a recent soldier. He looked like one of the ones that fought in the Civil War.
Civil War.
Weird hat and just odd, a uniform with tussles on his shoulder. And then there was like children behind him. There was a little girl. And so I believe that she might have been the one that was named Alice. That was, that was her little stone. So the next time I went there, I brought toys and I left them. And for many, many years, nobody would clean that cemetery up. And so the toys were there for a long time. But just recently, I passed that place because it's right at the bottom of the mountain. And they've removed the toys. But they've also made the cemetery look presentable. Not good. A lot of overgrowth, and you can see the stones, and it just looks better.
Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that.
No, preservation is a great
thing. I've always dreamed of owning a home with a graveyard in it. I do run a graveyard, so that's partway there. I can go there anytime I want.
I don't know, Tom. The historic district, there could be dead bodies anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. How about you, Melody? Did you always want a house with a graveyard?
Lot on an old graveyard.
Right.
And they tried to remove some of the bodies, but then when they were doing it, there was a rainstorm and some water actually opened up some graves, and they were finding skeletons, because the box is decayed.
Right.
Yeah, that happens at Silver Lake in Gardner, Massachusetts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Melody, quick question for Melody. Would you like to have a house next to a graveyard?
I live 3 houses down from a graveyard.
That's nice.
She got her own haunting when she walks outside.
Yeah, my town, the town's biggest graveyard. I live right near it.
The biggest graveyard in town, too.
Yeah. It's about 2 miles wide, and I live like 3 houses down from it. So we usually go in there and we go walking and stuff. There's a bunch of wildlife reservation, too, so you can hear like the frogs and the crickets and stuff at night. So it's like really calming and nice to go to.
That sounds really cool. I like graveyard hunting. I've done that for years.
Right.
I started with my very first team. They were that team that you should never join. I'm not going to say their name. I'm going to keep all that to myself. But they were making fun of me. But I was capturing some really good evidence on my photography. I kind of focused on photography, and then I focused on EVP. As I was learning one thing to the next, I would focus on that. But I always focused on the photography, because that, to me, I could see in the pictures. I can see spirits in pictures. So, and I got real good at it because they gave me their backlogs. So I did, like, me and another girl did 3 years of their backlogs. And it took us quite a while to get through their stuff. It wasn't stuff that they were bringing me to. It was stuff that they'd already done. So we did that, and I was pointing out things that they'd never even seen. And then there was a time when I captured an anomaly in the graveyard, and they wanted that picture so badly because it was one of those anomalies that it shouldn't be there.
Right.
And there was no wind, and it was very calm and pleasant. So it wasn't like a flower petal went flying off, and I captured that. But it was a pink anomaly, oval, and when I captured it, what I did was I cropped the picture so that I could see what it looked like. I wanted to really look at this thing. And so I did, and then that's what I showed them. I just showed them the crop picture. Well, they took that crop picture, and they tried to claim it as their own. But then here I am. I got the original. I got the entire picture. So I did gracefully step away from that team. There was too much going on. They were getting drunk and doing stupid stuff, and I didn't want to be a part of that. I was there to learn, to educate myself, and then if I help other people, then I do. You know what I'm saying? So I walked away from that team with my head held high. I tried to join another one, but they didn't want me. So I said, okay, whatever. I'll just create my own team, and we'll just learn together. So that's what I did. I created Main Extreme Paranormal. Yeah. And 2000.
That's awesome.
And I had some, team members, they come and go.
Yes, they do.
They do. Some are troublemakers and some are great.
Right.
But that's how you learn. You weed through the people that are serious, or some that are there as just an entertainment because they're bored.
Correct.
But I got lucky with a lot of people. Of course, like I said, it's a weeding process.
That it is.
Then, in 2010, I thought, I was a teenager experiencing these things. I want to teach teenagers what they could be aware of, help them tap into more of their senses. And what I did was I created a Teen Extreme group, and it was called Teen Extreme Ghost Hunters Club. And the kids could join. Yeah, it was so fun. The kids could join for free. The parents could join them on anything they wanted. They could come to the investigation. They could be at the meetings. We held all the meetings at the public library, so it was a safe zone. We had electricity. We had tables. It was set up so that we could all sit in a circle and just kind of go over what evidence we caught for every investigation that I had booked us for. So every investigation I booked us for, it was all summertime, was all historic locations. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow House. We went to the Tate Mansion, which was one of the people that worked for the King of England. I would believe it was King George. And where this house was, it was built in like 1773. It's still standing. It's a museum now. But we did the tour in that, and of course, because of the pictures, you couldn't take pictures, but we managed to do other things, like bring recorders and stuff like that. So every historical location that I booked, the Baxter Mansion, which is connected, which is was the governor, and he owned the Baxter State Park in Maine.
Yeah.
So every place had a awesome historical value. See what I'm saying?
Debbie, one quick thing. Baxter State Park was named for him. The person who purchased the land was, I believe, Nelson Rockefeller.
Well, I think it's really interesting.
Oh, no, Baxter State Park's great. You go there, that's the first place you see the sunrise in the east, and there's Pudgewuckies in there and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to give you
another thing I can talk about.
That's something I have to give you credit for, Debbie. Starting a junior division for the kids. Essex County had one, but we are going back to starting one up.
The kids absolutely loved it. I had one girl that came. She was in high school. She ended up being a shaman. I had another girl that still investigates with me today. She was a teenager. Now she's a grown woman with 3 children. She's still, and drop of the hat, she'll come. Everybody got something out of it. Let's just say, the group.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
But after we did a historical location like the buildings, we followed up by going to the graveyard. So on the day of investigation, we did the building, we did the tours, and we did what we could with what equipment we were allowed to use.
Right.
Then we went to the graveyard, found the people that lived in the house, and, just kind of like took pictures of the graveyard. And it was so funny because one day we were all just kind of doing our thing in the graveyard. It was getting to be closing time for the group. But there was a rock wall, because there's tons of them around here in Maine, and New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So, and we were just kind of passing through, and there was this weird shape of a rock, and I pulled it out, and there was a book. And in the book it said, leave your name and put the book back. It was in like a plastic thing. So,
yeah.
And so I did. About 5 years later, I went there. I wanted to see if that book was still there. And it's just like, you don't know. It's like Discovery Day. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what's going to happen. And every location had an interesting experience for everybody. And they were all different experiences. So that's how I got started. And even though I only did that for 1 year, I did get to be on the Sean Sellers show back in 2010, and that was a big deal because I'd never even been on the radio. And then the next year, I believe, I started the USA Paranormal Radio. I did that for, 10 years or something, and then I started the Hollywood Red Carpet radio show, which I've done right up until, last fall. I took a hiatus because I got kind of ill. But we're going to be bringing that back, and I interview actors, directors, producers, musicians, people in all genres of entertainment on that show. The Paranormal show was for everybody in every cryptozoology to UFOs to, I've had Stanton Friedman. I've had, and you guys might know him. You might not, but he was one of the big wigs. What I did was I entered and went to the UFO conventions And so I got to meet.
Oh, fun!
You want to get interviews? You got to go find your people,
Right?
And you got to find, and they got to meet you, because I think sometimes when they meet, they trust you more.
Right.
And in the beginning, you know how hard it is to get a guest, and they want to know if you're a legit person, and you're not going to tarnish their reputation. And that's what it's all about.
Right.
Is they want to be on a show where they're not made of the joke. Because their business is themselves.
Because there's a lot of podcasters and radio people who don't believe, who will bring them on the air and try to belittle them and make them look like it. We see that when we do library talks. You always have one stooge in the crowd that's a non-believer, but he's ignorant.
Stump the stooge.
Right. I mean,
I'm also stumping the stooge.
Right.
Because they didn't experience your experience.
No.
And they never will. No more than you will experience their lack of experience.
Right.
So when I lecture at the university, I did that for like 10 years. When I would show these students, and I was getting that guy in the back row. and I called him right out. I said, because they're the ones that are hitting you with the hardest questions, which is great. I love giving hard questions.
I love them too.
I love them too.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because when I met John Zaffis, and it was his birthday, and they were doing the thing at the Taps, New Hampshire hotel, and I went there like 3 times because I wanted to meet everybody. And so John's birthday, and they're having a good old time. Jason and Steve and Grant. Who else was there? Anyway, long story short, I met Taps quite a bunch of times, so they pretty much know who I am. But John, I got very lucky. The House in Waterboro, which we're going to be talking about, that's one of these places that Tom's going to lead us up to. The owner of that gave me a mirror. And there was a lot of history behind the mirror where people were seeing a witch or a beautiful woman that appeared to come across as, and I don't know, I can't tell you for sure if she's a witch or not or whatever, It doesn't matter to me what people choose to be. Pagans, Wiccan, whatever. It is what it is. So I called John. I said, you met me before. We had a great talk. I asked you hard questions because I did. He's a demonologist. I want to know this stuff. So I said, I have a mirror for you if you want it. I don't want it because it's too creepy for me, and I don't want it in my house. Would you like this mirror? And I told him the story behind what the owner told me. So he's like, yeah. So I called up my old teammate, and I said, we're going to go to Connecticut. We're going to John Zaffis' house. That's where he has the museum anyway. So I get there with my friend, and he invites us in the house, and he's like, would you like to be in my documentary? And I'm like, you don't have to twist my arm twice. Put me in anything you want. I don't care. And I didn't. And so I am in his documentary. It's called Mirror, Mirror. And it's based around me donating the mirror and that the creepy factor behind this mirror and what John does when he receives things from people for his museum. So it's kind of a wrap all of what, if somebody donates a haunted item to him, that's how it and this was back in 2010, so we're really talking, quite a while ago. But because of that, John and his sister, Julie, and I became really good friends. We ended up hanging out with the New York team from Snug Harbor, Core. What was it, Core? I can't remember everybody. It's terrible. But anyway, so me and Julie got to travel down. Julie came and picked me up, and I'm like, let's go. We're going on a ghost hunt. But I've been very, very fortunate. We got to do Fort Mifflin with Taps and John, and I already knew Bruce Tango from interviewing him a few times, and I knew David, and I knew Steve. I never met Barry until then. I met Amy for the first time then, and then. So I kept going to the events, and because I want to learn. These guys got their own TV program. I figured they know what they're talking about. And a lot of it is fluffing and, fluffing guff, but they were using real equipment. And Jason was always, whenever we were investigating, he was always around. He wanted to see what's going on. He wanted to see if people captured things. So he did have a vast interest. But, yeah, it was pretty great. And all the experiences I've had from Maine to Florida, New York, the Berkshires, every place I've ever been, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, I've had a great experience. I know like people are like, that's so scary, but to me, it's like what I've always been meant to do.
And that's what people
don't. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't understand. This is, for some of us, it's a later in life calling. For some of us, it starts early in life. And for other of us, it starts early. Then you got to bury it because you're forced to, whether by family or by society. And I don't understand how you would have ended up in a straitjacket, because me and you are only about a 5. Wait a minute. Me and you only about a 5-year difference.
Funny family where it was a big family.
Right.
So, and if you just said something that just sounded crazy, then they're going to pick on you. They're going to call you crazy.
Right.
And, yeah.
But you gotta remember something, Debbie. Me and you only got a 5-year difference in age. So we weren't in the straitjacket age.
I just didn't want a lobotomy and all that. But I want to say my very first experience I ever had was at the fort in St. Augustine. And we would
St. Augustine, Florida?
We went from Maine to Florida when I was a kid, so we went to all the theme places and all the, Disney World and Busch Gardens, all that. Well, we went to the fort, and I was just like maybe 7 years old, roughly. Well, I'm kind of pulling up the tail of the group because I'm looking at everything. I'm just very curious about everything. So I look in this cell. And the adults could look in the cell easily because they just look over this like wall thing. Well, as a kid, we had to look through the hole, So when I looked through the hole, there was a man in there. I thought he was a mannequin first. Then he reached out and asked me for help. He was dressed like ragged. He was very dirty. His hair, everything about him was very like a real prisoner, like of the time.
Right. I
thought he was a mannequin. But then he reached out, and with his hand, he was chained to the wall, and he said, "Can you please help me?" So I yelled to the group, "Hey, there's a man in there who wants to get out." I figured he was an actor that needed a break because that's what we're taught to believe. And I would have never thought that guy was a ghost.
Right.
Until they yelled at me saying, "Why did you make us come back here? There's nobody in there." And I could have swore, I still can see him today. I can still see the way he looked to me, the way when he was reaching out to me. And I was wicked little, so for me to remember that and the details to behind that, it was just. So that's why I'm saying, like, I didn't dare to say much to anybody. We lived in new houses, so it wasn't like I was experiencing a lot of historic houses that have, like, haunted value. My experiences were at locations, but St. Augustine is known to be one of the most haunted locations in America.
Right.
Mostly because of the fighting, and a lot of people died from illnesses. And there was like some war or something that happened there where there was a makeshift hospital. And they even told us when I went back down there years later to do a ghost hunt thing and to be a part of a group that was doing like an event. And we got to talking to the people, and the graveyards are all over the place. And I was saying, like, there's a lot of people dead. They had signs even mentioning about the illnesses. So a shop owner said, yeah, this was one of the makeshift hospitals, and they had limbs all the way up out the back window, tons of limbs, arms, legs, and whatever, out just outside the window. They would cut them off, or some type of bad fight happened there, and so down south you get a lot of interesting events, paranormal stuff that goes on, and all I can say is just experience it. If you don't believe us, experience it. If you're too afraid to experience it, just enjoy the stories behind somebody else's experience.
Right.
But don't knock them, because what if you have that experience? What if you have an experience? In order to not frighten yourself to death. See, we don't want people to die from being scared.
No.
But we do want people to be educated on the factors behind what it possibly is.
Right.
And I'm all about debunking, too, because I will listen to, still today, I can watch somebody's video and go, yeah, that was a train going by. I'm like, I still have the instinct to not pick their work apart, but define it.
Right. Well, that's good.
It comes natural. It's not my fault.
Melody, do you have any questions for Debbie?
No, I was just looking up the St. Augustine thing, because I remember going there myself. I stayed in Florida for a little bit, and I remember the energies being off, and it was because there were a lot of international kind of battles there, so they have a lot of rich history.
Oh, wicked. And we actually spent the night investigating the Miss Caroline, but there is another hotel within a block from that bed and breakfast. There was another place where the woman was said to be, like, killing people. So, yeah. I mean, you go down south, you're going to come into all kinds of weird locations, but they're very rich.
Right.
I went to an orange grove down in Cape Canaveral with a friend of mine to investigate, because I was down there for a week, so, we were just taking it all in, and went to this orange grove. It was an old farmstead, completely demolished, but the experience there was just yucky. You know how when you go into a place and you feel like you're not wanted?
Yes.
That was it.
Yes.
That was it. But we still fight through that. We don't walk away. No, we still fight through it.
We do.
Oh my gosh, that place was so cool. Very, very unique and different. Nothing like New England.
Right.
So
New Orleans was like that right after the storm.
Oh, I bet. And that's what I tell everybody. I do believe spirits use a lot of moisture, water, to evolve into whatever. I think that's one of the components is water-based. Because I don't hear too many. I mean, there are maybe a few ghost stories about the desert, but not so many.
No.
And that's why a lot of investigators that I've known throughout the years they say that, the best times to investigate are in the fall or in the spring. And what's in the fall and the spring? The most moisture at the time.
So, Debbie, let's do a quick run. So, one day you must be sitting at home, right? And your phone rings.
And my what?
Your phone rings.
Yeah.
And you get a call to go to, I believe it's Vassalboro, Maine.
Oh, yeah.
To this nice person's house who you never met before. Says she's got a haunted house.
All right, so Vassalboro, Maine comes after that haunted house. That haunted house was in Waterboro. It was originally...
Oh, Waterboro, okay.
A woman named Sybil Howe owns it. She's an author, and she's a fabulous person. She's fantastic. She's fun to talk with. She giggles and laughs. But she had some serious experiences at the house. It was a very small 1730s small farmhouse. But when I was brought into that investigate that place, it was after Paranormal State came with with Lorraine Warren and Ryan Bureau, I believe that's his name, and Chip Coffey.
Right.
So them guys all went there and they did the thing and they did their show on it and they called it Pet Cemetery. So if you guys ever want to look it up, Paranormal State, Pet Cemetery, you can check it out. That's the house. So my team went in there and oh my gosh, the experiences. I actually went there before that just to do a run through with Sybil, and then her family member showed up, so they went out to the yard. Well, I stayed in the upstairs of the house, and there was things already starting to happen. It's almost like they knew what was coming. So, yeah, and you can see that on YouTube with Maine Ghost Hunters. I invited them to come down because we were doing cooperatives. So, like, I'd have them come down and do some cases with me down here, and then I'd go up to their place and do some cases with them. And, you know, it was a really great exchange. And educational because they're all techie, and I'm a little bit more on the sensitive side. So it was a nice balance, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they brought this subject down. That was, yeah. So a lot of the history came out during the investigation without even doing the history, but I was doing some of the history. And they just said there was a lot of negative stuff that happened. Everybody that lives there throughout the years of time would go into financial fall. The land was originally bought from a female Indian by this white family named the Cobbs. That family would struggle and then be murdered, and then their babies would be killed. And there was just one terrible thing after the other. The wife was hung in the barn. The husband was hung in the stairwell to the upstairs of the house. Just the children were massacred, whatever, killed. So during my investigation, I captured all kinds of stuff. And it just looks like a window through history. There's so many different things, like ghost animals and just frightening people. And so one picture we captured, I took a picture of, I captured a motorcycle. And it looked like a tractor on a motorcycle. I was trying to figure it out. And I said, geez, I wonder. So Sybil, the owner, this is long after our investigation, says, let's have a get-together and people can come and enjoy, you know, just before she sold the house. So I brought my stuff over so we could show the people that showed up. And one lady knew all about the motorcycle. Oh, my gosh. She says a man came, because it's kind of like a dead-end curve. So this guy came around the corner and wiped out the motorcycle and died right on the lawn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And which is weird because as we do these investigations, a lot of story comes out of what we're doing. And we don't get it yet, but we eventually get it. So
right.
I'll move on from that house, which I got to do 4 different times. It was great. I love Sybil to pieces. She's the greatest person. She's got a book out. If anybody's interested, it's called The Paranormal House. She did use some of my photographs from the investigations in her book. And one of them, an entity, it's coming across as a pugwudgie. So if anybody knows what a pugwudgie is, if you don't, it's a Native American, what is it, a cryptid or something, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. And you know about the pugwudgie.
Right.
Tom.
Hey, I got a question for both of you, okay?
Yeah.
Pugwudgies, what do you think they are? Are they the same as elementals or different?
So I've heard they're like a cross between like an elemental and like a fae gone wrong.
Okay.
Has always been how I've heard it.
All right. How about you, Debbie?
I don't know. I think it might be an elemental and an alien.
Okay.
Well, because they're so negative.
Right.
And they're based on negative energy.
Right.
And what their purpose is to steal children and to kill them, eat them, whatever. But then again, you know, different cultures would scare their children with a bedtime story.
Right.
And sometimes they would say, well, if you don't go to sleep right now, Diego's going to come and get you. And of course, the kid's going, I don't want to be taken by the devil. I'm going to go to sleep. So I want to say maybe, and maybe because it looks like a cherub. What I captured looks like it's got pointy horns. It has a face like a cherub. It sits like a tiny person. It looks like a midget, but with but almost like a child too.
With pointy ears.
Yeah, but it does not have a friendly feel about it. You look at the picture and you go, that's not friendly.
No.
And I've taken pictures of ghosts. Some of them are actually quite friendly looking. Some of them are very scary looking. And somebody asked me, too, like, what about clothing? Do they wear clothing? I said, most of them do. But when I was at a poorhouse in New York and we were investigating the TV ward, I captured a man nude. So it is what it is. You don't have, like, there's no rules to the game.
No.
It is what it is.
No, that is an interesting take on that. What are you going to say, Melody?
They present themselves however they want to present themselves. So it's really just kind of like the luck of the draw. We're just there to capture it is all.
Yeah. Communication, whether it be through EVP or on photography. I know that a lot of these spirits don't even understand video or cameras. I mean, but then the cameras come in 1900 roughly? Somewhere just before the 1900s, they were using photography.
And you had to be rich.
To take pictures of people.
Right.
Or, just like families or groups of people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but early on, you had to have money.
So anybody that's passed beyond this realm that we're in, 150 years ago, that's what we might be working on 200 years ago. We're capturing things. We're capturing history is what we're doing.
Correct. So you had a Pudgewucky over there.
Yeah. Well, that was weird, and a lot of people didn't understand. I even showed John's office, and it puzzled him. But that's what I like to do. I like to see the demonologists get a little, James Arnino, I'm like, check this out, guy. You got to look at this stuff. And Carl Johnson, I'm like, you got to check this stuff out, because it educates them.
Right. Now,
even if they think they know everything, they're going to find out that it's always a learning machine, whatever we do in the field.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course it is. We're learning every day. If you're not learning every day, then you belong out of this field.
Right.
But I know why they did that, because historically, Pudgewuckies have only been seen in the Bridgewater Triangle and at Baxter State Park locally.
Well, in Waterboro, where the house is, it's all dense wood.
Yes.
There's no. I mean, you get like a house, and then you drive quite a ways, and then find another house, and then you drive quite a ways, and then you find another house. So it's pretty much in the dense area, and it's high ground, so it's not flat land.
No. I mean,
you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like in the mountain-ish area.
Right.
So, and like I said,
it's awesome that you caught one, because I feel like that's one of the cryptids that doesn't get much often mentioned.
No. I mean,
no, I don't think so either.
No.
They're naming all kinds of new ones every day. So,
right.
I've had that guy on my show, the one that would create new names for new cryptids that he would come up with. And so I always thought that was quite interesting, that still to this day we don't know what everything is. And
no, we don't.
Then again, we've got a lot of UFO things going on. Just recently, was it last year or the year before, they shot down an unidentified thing over Canada. And
yes.
So, and people are constantly seeing things, and I can't debunk that, because I look at it and just go, maybe.
Right.
So, and that brings me to another question. Like, if I'm maybe capturing a spirit, how do I know that's not a cloaked UFO or alien?
Well, that's a good question.
Oh, that's interesting.
I never thought of that one. That's a great one, Debbie. You come up with all the great ones.
Mind blown.
Yes.
Well, think about that. Like, to be honest, everybody listening, think about that. And that's just part of the paranormal. But yes, if you saw something and and is able to do a cloaking situation where it can come off as a glimmer, kind of like that movie Predator, where he has a cloaking device where you only see a shimmer.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just something to throw it out at everybody.
Now, Debbie, I got
thinking.
I got an interesting question for you.
Oh boy, bring it on.
Okay, so you've interviewed paranormal experts. You've interviewed crypto. Yep. You've interviewed ufologists, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody that was happening, I was getting them.
Right. So there is a belief out there. I mean, we're going to get into this a little bit because I like getting into this conversation and getting everybody's idea on this. And Melody's like, oh, no, not again.
What is it?
Some people believe that, let's start with Bigfoot. Some people believe they're interdimensional creatures. Country music singer that sang the national anthem on TV. He was a big time Bigfoot hunter, and I sometimes got hung up on his stories because I'm not going to go chase that thing out in the woods. And no, thank you. Okay.
I'm not looking to be eaten by anything in the woods. So, but that's what they did. And so what's your question, Tom, on that?
So do you believe Bigfoot are interdimensional creatures?
Yeah. I think that anything's possible in the woods. And when you're talking dense forest, and if you get you go North Maine, you got nothing but maybe a moose 10 miles from there, might be a house. You might find the only gas station from like 20 miles or something like that. It's one of those catch-22s where when you're up north and you're almost in Canada, forget it. It's just dense.
Well, even northern New Hampshire. I mean, if you're up north, and I tell people this all the time on all my shows, if you're out there traveling looking for Bigfoot, UFO, and ghosts, and you got a half a tank of gas, and you're up near Berlin, New Hampshire. Oh, sorry, Berlin, New Hampshire. Or Casco Bay, Maine, and you see a gas station, you better fill up.
Fill up.
Because you may not find another one till you get south of Portland after 4 o'clock.
You don't know today's day, you don't know who is out there. Everybody's got a gun or... especially in Maine,
right?
Everybody, so many people that just they live by their hunting and they eat the food, the food that they kill. So, but when you're investigating locations, I say go to places that are not so deep in the woods. But if you're looking for Sasquatch, please hike, have fun.
Now, you live up in Maine.
Don't invite me because I am not going.
Okay. You live up in Maine, Debbie, right?
I live in Maine, and I ride horses through the woods, but I'll be darned if I'm going to go walk around with some guy that wants to hang out with Sasquatch. Don't invite me to your Yeti party.
Okay. I'll remember that one. No Yeti party for Debbie.
But if you got to go start going on, I'd be more than happy to come and share
I know you would.
Or learn your experience and be able to feed back. Because I believe that when we do these things, we do these when we're doing a private location. I will not open up to people. I might explain an experience, but I'm not going to say this is where I experienced this and this is what you got to do.
No.
Because I've been to a lot of the historic locations, partly with Maine Ghost Hunters. We became pretty tight and did a lot. And we actually met up with other groups like when we went to the Devil's Footprint. So if nobody knows about that, there's a big, huge footprint on a rock in Manchester, Maine. There's also...
Hold on. Put the brakes on, Debbie.
What?
Debbie,
Okay.
put the brakes on. I've heard of Manchester, UK. I've heard of Manchester, New Hampshire. I've heard of Manchester, Vermont. Where is Manchester, Maine?
Yes, there is. And it's an old meeting house. And I'll tell you something. We got to go there, and the caretaker gave us a great walk around, and we got to investigate the church, and then the post office, which was adjoining it in the same building, and then we went to the graveyard, and which is where the rock is. The rock is actually so. The story behind the rock is this man was trying to get this huge boulder out of the road to create the road. And he couldn't move it, and he struggled, and he struggled, and he struggled. So he supposedly sold his soul to the devil and wanted that rock moved if he could. Anyway, so the next day the rock was moved, and there's a big footprint.
So where is Manchester,
It's so
Maine?
weird that you're talking about this today because, Tom, like you, I had never heard of Manchester, Maine either. And literally just before this podcast, I actually read something on this story on Instagram.
Where is Manchester, Maine?
It's really cool if you ever get an opportunity to go see that footprint.
Debbie.
It's pretty cool. Wow.
Debbie, I don't know if you could hear me. I've asked a couple times. I don't know if we're having technical ghostly difficulties again. Where is Manchester, Maine?
Yeah.
Where is it? In Maine, but where?
It's up north. More north than me. Probably about an hour north. I'll send you information on it.
Okay. So is it from
You can
Portland,
actually look up
Maine?
The Devil's Footprint, and you'll read the story.
All right.
And it'll show you the location.
All right. So from Portland, Maine, how long would it take to get up there?
Probably a little over an hour.
Okay, so we're way up north. Got it.
Well, way up north to me is 3 hours.
Okay.
Like where my mother lives, up in Eustis. My mother has a house up there, and there's a lot of cool stuff up there. No matter where you go, you're going to find some awesome stuff.
All right.
You know, really cool history. And I like stuff like murders and things that happened in the past. And when I was in Islesboro, it's a little island off Maine, up by Camden, where they filmed, there was a movie that was filmed up there back in the 30s with, what's it, Jane McCall or something, very famous actress. I stayed in a hotel. And in that night, and I know that this can happen to anybody, but the sink water turned on while we were trying to fall asleep. A little tiny bathroom that was adjoining my room.
Right.
And so I'm like, the water just turned on in the bathroom. So my husband gets up, shuts it off, gets back in bed. He's done. He doesn't want to get up anymore. He's got to go to work the next day because he was working on the island. The water turns back on. I get up and shut it off, and I said, please let us get some sleep. The water didn't turn back on again. So, and I'm not saying that there isn't something where pressure could cause that, because it could, but at my request,
it stopped.
Yeah. So, anyway. But, yeah, Islesboro, John Travolta had a house there. Got to see that. Well, there's an Islesboro, at one end, it's called Dark Harbor. And there was a house there. And the land is said to be super haunted. It's called Dark Harbor for a reason. But a man had rowed a boat in the 1800s, rowed this boat, and landed in a storm on this like a dock or whatever. So he goes up to the house because he just wants to dry off, and he probably knew the man that lived in the house. Well, the man was off onto the mainland with his friends or whatever, but he was on the mainland. He'd already come back from his trip prior to this man showing up at the house. His wife had harped on him over and over and over about a rug. She wanted a rug. for the house. So apparently he brought the rug home, and she hopped on so much. And even on the day that she brought the rug, maybe it wasn't the right color or whatever, but she wasn't a very likable person, according to the people in the town. Nobody liked her. Well, the man that showed up, the house was dark, but he could see a lump under the rug. Ooh. So now you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So when they did go the next day with the sheriff, or probably the mainland sheriff, I don't think they had too much crime on an island back then. But
right.
They pulled the rug up, and they could see where she literally tore her fingernails off trying to dig her way out. So he put the rug over her, stapled her, nailed it down, and left her. Went to the bar and on the mainland. Went to the bar. That's where they arrested him. They asked him, like, we went to your house, and he just openly admitted, like, he was already drunk enough, he didn't care. So that's said to be haunted by that woman and the fingernail thing, and so it's a great ghost story.
Right. All those are great ghost stories. Yes.
Wicked. I love this stuff. That's why
you have a passion for this, Debbie.
I never forget.
A passion that's very passionate about this field, and I do appreciate it. We do appreciate it. The Paranormal Zone appreciates it. I know the public will. And I know internationally they're going to accept this, and all our international and national viewers. So that's a good thing. Debbie, what about...
people are getting there.
Yeah. Right.
Because I interviewed people from all over the world, from Australia to England to France, you name it. I had a whole bunch of countries.
Right.
And I was doing that because I wanted to know their techniques and what they learn and how they do things.
Right. And everybody does it differently.
Charlie Bill Castle in Ireland. It's one of the most haunted castles in the UK.
Right.
And they were doing a ghost hunt there. So we got to walk the walk with their ghost hunt while they were doing an investigation on live radio.
Right, which is cool.
Cool.
Super cool. Because my next guest was an actress named Dee Wallace, who was in the movie E.T. and Cujo and some other Stephen King films. An amazing lady. She was the most inspirational actress I've ever met on the show. So, experiences are just one in a million. Right,
which is good. I mean, this is exciting times. The fields are growing. The paranormal is growing. You're growing. Melody's growing. We're all growing. And that's what's great about this. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Paranormal Zone's here for, to bring in experts, para-experts, people who have passion and caring about the field of the paranormal. And that includes ufology, Bigfoot, paranormal ghost stuff, obviously, and anything else that goes bump into the night. And as we continue these series, we will have Debbie back on. Debbie, we're coming near the end now, so we want to thank you for coming on to the show today. We're going to have you back, okay?
Well, thank you, guys, because it made me relive my experiences, and I love doing that.
I know you do.
Good.
I know you. And, let's keep an eye open. You might be on a little bit more with your old show. I'll give you a call next week on that.
That sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you, Debbie, for tuning in.
Thank you, guys. And it was
Melody,
nice to
don't
meet
go
you
anywhere
guys.
yet. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay.
Melody, it was really nice to meet you, hon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I really appreciate it. I loved listening to you.
And vice versa. Well, thanks, everybody.
No problem. Good night.
Tom's show. And Tom, thank you so much.
No
yes,
problem.
I'll be
Thank
happy
you.
to come back.
I know you will. Thank you. We're going to love having you back on.
All right.
So,
All right, good night.
Good night. Melody, do you have anything going on in next week or so that you want to give a quick shout out that you're doing before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I will actually on Thursday, this tomorrow, actually, I'll be at Puggy's Antique Shop offering card pulls, and then I will also be there on Sunday doing so. And then on June 1st, you can find me at Stolen Shadow Emporium in Keene, New Hampshire to offer card pulls there as well.
All righty. This weekend, Essex County has a paranormal event at Haunted Hilldale Cemetery. Next week we have a case that we can't talk about, but we do have a case, next week. Boy, the weeks are flying into each other. And if there's anybody listening, tomorrow night, it's not paranormal, but I am doing a talk on British North America, the French Indian War in Haverhill, Massachusetts. So if anybody locally is listening by the time this hits the air, 6:30, the Presbyterian Church, located right off of Route 97 in Haverhill, Massachusetts. I'll be doing a talk on British North America. And then Saturday coming up, we will be at Haunted Hilldale Cemetery. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. Thanks, Melody. You'll be back next week with us. I will be giving you a call, and we'll get the schedule set up for June. And thank you very much. I want to thank everybody tuning in locally, stately, and, of course, nationally and internationally, checking out the Paranormal Zone. Thank you, everybody. Time to sign off and for me to head to the crypt. Good night.